Jimmy. Jimmy. James, son!
Good morning and welcome back to another episode of the Jim's channel. Unlike usual, we will not be rebuilding an entire car in this episode. We will merely be repairing one. I got a call on the other side of town that the Dodge Neon has crapped out inexplicably and they don't know what's going wrong with it. I already did some tests and I know exactly what's wrong with it. So we have this pile of parts here in the passenger seat. That's quite a tongue twister. And the Neon needs it. Got the keys for the Neon right here. You might have actually seen this Neon in a previous video. It's an SRT4 Neon, a black one. So I have to head across town and do some work. It is 8:59 in the morning. Wow, if only my camera would focus, right? 8:59 in the morning, which is pretty late for me. I usually wake up about 7. Fortunately today we have no tunes. The radio in my Previa died. I think maybe the fuse inside the actual unit crapped out. This is the third one in a row to do this, so whatever brand this is, dual, yeah, you guys aren't getting my money next time. Sorry, it's gonna have to be a Pioneer next time. But anyway, let's head across town and do some repairing. So here we are on the other side of town. There's my van. Here is the Neon once again, and we will be replacing the ignition actuator pin, I guess is what you'd call it, because when you go to put the key in the ignition of this vehicle and you turn it, you put your little footsie on the clutch over here to start it, you get a whole lot of lights, but you also get a whole lot of nothing, not even an attempt to crank. And I have verified that the starter is good, also verified that the battery is good, and that thing annoys me every single time. So you know what that means. Ignition switch, very, very common on these vehicles. So let's get started. We come up here with a screwdriver, a Phillips head, and take the 3 screws. There's one on the side there, one over here, and one in the middle. And take the lower steering column cover off, which will allow us access to the top cover as well. There are the column covers off, and now we have access to the top of the steering column. So I need to take these 2 Torx security screw bits out, which if my camera would focus you'd be able to see. Then we got to come inside here and take this ignition switch out. Also Torx security screws, which luckily we brought the proper bits for that. And then we can get down in there a little bit farther. I have released the steering wheel, so I pulled this down all the way. This is the little release mechanism. So you need a T20 Torx security screwdriver to remove those 2 screws. If you don't have that, good luck, because you really, really need it. And then what you do once those 2 screws come out, is that you grab this and just pull it up like that, and that'll give you access to the ignition switch over there. So now let's go take that ignition switch out. So there is the ignition switch, and if you look right there, there is the security bit that they keep to keep people from stealing it. This is the actual screw itself. I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see it or not very well, but that is a T10 Torx security bit, and you absolutely have to have a set of these security bit removers to take it out, because the normal Allen key wrench will not work, unlike on top. Looks like I have a call going on, so I will be back. So once I got the ignition switch out, this fell out. If you're wondering what this is part of the ignition pin actuator. This is what we initially expected to cause the fault in the car, and it looks like the owner was completely 100% correct. So it's going to need a new ignition pin actuator, which lives in its little hidey hole under here, and it means I have to take this little bracket out, and I also have to take the ignition cylinder itself out, which isn't really too hard, but it's kind of annoying. The next thing I also need to test is the ignition switch to make sure it itself is not dead. I just stick a screwdriver here and see if the car starts. If it does, then you know that the ignition switch actuator is the thing causing the problem and not the actual switch itself. So I'm going to start taking off a few other things down here. So now we're into the fun part. This is the actual ignition actuator pin, and you can see that I've taken this housing off. Not easy to get to. It requires 2 T10 Torx security bits as well. And then this allows us to get to the actual ignition actuator pin. Now, I am going to have to turn the ignition on for this and push this little button right here down to remove the actual ignition barrel. That way I can remove the actuator pin and it will fall down and let me to install the new one. So let's get to that. Now that I've gone up underneath here and turned the ignition switch to the run position and pushed in the removal pin, this should, yeah, come out like that. And there's the ignition pin on the ground. It literally ejected itself, just like I thought it would. So we've got some stuff to check out here. That is the new ignition pin actuator. The old one is right here. It disintegrated upon removal. You can see this thing is broken off. And there's some kind of lever, some cantilever, and a spring. And the new one came with his new spring for the ignition switch itself, but I'm not going to use that. I'm going to keep the old OEM one. which is over there if you can see it, that little metallic spring. So I guess we're gonna have to install this now, and I have to go look up which way the ignition switch has to be facing when I install this so I don't do it backwards and snap this off. So give me a second. And there's the key and the ignition cylinder back in place, and also the new ignition switch actuator pin is installed, so I'm gonna have to put that lower cover back on, and then we can reinstall the ignition switch itself. See if all of this was worth something. So before we go putting any column covers back on, everything is back together electronically at least. So I want to make sure that when I push my foot on the clutch and start the key that the car decides it wants to start. Let's check that out first. And that would be a yes. So make sure the key is nice and smooth. Make sure it comes out of the ignition. She does. Okay, so we got to make sure we do all the tests first. Otherwise, we're going to put something back together that doesn't work. And this thing just like to say peekaboo and then it goes away again. So always a pleasure, Pioneer, always a pleasure. But we fixed the customer complaint, the main one, that the ignition switch was not allowing the car to start. Now I need to go into the hood after putting all this back together and replace the valve cover gasket. Now that we completed the electrical work to get the car to actually start, it's time for the valve cover gasket. So the first thing we do is come in here and rip this little plastic covering off. It says SRT4 on it. Put that to the side, and now we can see we have a couple of bolts. I think they're all 8mm. They go all the way around. First thing we got to do though is remove this MSD ignition module and also these little coil boots. So let's get to it. That's how you take off the MSD ignition coil. Just 4 10mm bolts and a plug with a push pin in the side of it. There it is sitting over there. I have labeled it. Next thing we have to do is start loosening all the 8mm bolts that hold the valve cover on. So there actually ended up being 3 different kinds of bolts that hold the valve cover on. You got the long ones with the gaskets built in, I guess you call it. Got the shorter ones with the gaskets built in, and then you have the studs with the gaskets built in. And now that I have all of those off, I should just be able to pull the valve cover off like this and check out the motor, which is super duper clean. And a nasty Felpro gasket has been found in its place, which is why it's leaking, because these blue Felpros are the devil. I'm sorry to say that, Felpro. I don't expect you're ever going to sponsor me, but your gaskets are the devil. So, sorry. Now I've cleaned up the valve cover gasket mating surface, both on the inside lip right there and on the outside lip surrounding it. These are the old disgusting Felpro gaskets. Just as I was saying these are of the devil, an old woman walked by right about there and just stared at me for a solid 5 minutes, but that's okay. They are of the devil. We're replacing it with a Molly gasket. You know, Molly, because not only is Molly a good party drug, but they also make fantastic gaskets. These, you can see, are not bright fluorescent blue. The only time you make a gasket bright fluorescent blue is when you want to show off that you have said gasket. Molly doesn't care to show off because they make a good quality product. I've put them in several vehicles and never had an issue. My Felpro gasket right there in the minivan that I use for all my work, that's currently leaking and it's only been there a year. So Felpro and me, we just don't get along. But there's the new gasket all the way around the edge. These are the new inner spark plug well gaskets. I did clean up the surface of this as well. So now the only thing left to do is reattach everything. I didn't put this plastic piece in, which I was smart enough to just lose down there. Goodness gracious me, I almost caused a conundrum there. But anyway, the metal one that comes with this vehicle is far superior to the crappy plastic ones that they give you with the kit. So why would we do that? I don't know. We are going to put a little bit of good old Toyota Seal Packing 103 on the edges, just right here and on that side, and maybe towards the timing cover, because the previous person had done that, and I'm sure there's a reason for that. So we're going to just put a very gentle little amount on there, not a generous amount, that's for sure. Everything's back together, and we're going to do one final start before we leave. The one thing you don't want to do is leave a customer with a car that doesn't work. Stranding customers is not a good way to get new ones, or to keep your old ones for that matter. Put the key in the ignition, click her over, put our little footsie down there on the clutch. Ooh, she sounds good. Fuel trim's alright, 14.7. Boost is low. I mean, it's not too low, but it's low, you know what I mean? Everything's working the way God intended it to do, so looks like we have one repair well done. Not medium rare. I'm gonna go ahead and call the customer and tell him everything's the way he wants it to be. That check engine light's gonna have to stay that way, and we've already talked about that. All the custom whatnots that he's done to this car, hold on, have made it to where it will not pass its inspection, unfortunately. So that's the way she goes in the state of Texas, boys. This thing is so irritating, I need to leave now. Anywho, there's all the old parts. I'm gonna go ahead and give the customer a call. Well, that was a job well done. I called the customer and he came out, paid me my monies, which is always good. And it is, let's see, 11:02 in the afternoon. Hello, me, hello. 11:02 in the afternoon. So it only took just about 2 hours. Not so bad. Now I gotta go home and diagnose why my radio decided to shit its pants. Man, I'm telling you, Dual, you guys make the worst. I already got a JVC replacement stereo for this. It's a Bluetooth, so when I get home, I got some work to do to my own vehicle. But that is a job well done. So it's a little later in the day, and I finally found a Previa at the pick-a-pull. I really needed another Previa because there's some parts that I've just been missing for a while. I'm on my iPhone, so if the audio sounds like shit, I apologize. You know, Apple and all that. I will be taking this driver's seat because it's immaculate. It's got a few small stains, but mine is just like, the foam is just gone on all one side, and there's duct tape holding it on. This one also has this center console bit that I have, but mine has a little bit of a crack, so maybe I'll take that. I really needed those door panels, but, you know, someone took those. Someone would put a really nice, like, cargo bed in here, which I really like, but I'm not taking that. I can make my own. This thing had 299,000 miles on it, but I bet you it didn't die of something mechanical. In fact, the engine looks pretty good, so, who knows what killed it. I do need this corner marker light. I've been looking for one of these forever, so that's a good thing. Does it have another corner marker light? Yeah, it's got both. I'll probably take both, to be honest. And I'll just take a look around and see if there's anything else that I really need in it. Someone's put a new radiator in this one, too. Mine has the original radiator still in it from the factory. So, I guess we'll take a look at some stuff on here. Ooh, even a master cylinder. So, now that I've finished with the Neon, I'm going to do a little bit of an update on the Previa. I've had it for about 3 years now. It's almost time to get the 2023 registration sticker. But there's a few little things that have needed over the years that I've been neglecting, and I finally found one at the Mega U-Pullet that I salvaged a bunch of parts from. If you will excuse my voice, I am pretty sick right now. That's not going to stop me, though. So the first thing I'm going to do is change out this corner lens. As you can tell, it's very cloudy and gross, and on top of that, it's held in with duct tape. It's actually not screwed in whatsoever. So I could just grab this and pull it out right now if I felt the need, which is not good. That's not what you need for a corner lens. Next thing we're going to change is this mirror here. I don't know if you can tell, but right here, somebody hit it in a parking lot years ago and dented it and took a chunk basically out of it. And also, this thing has never really sat right. It always wobbles. You can tell based on the crude etching on the side of this that somebody cut a piece of glass previous to me getting it and sort of just stuck it on there, because when I'm driving it wobbles around like crazy and irritates the living hell out of me. So that's the next thing. After that, we are going to be replacing the driver's seat. Why am I replacing it? It looks perfect, you ask. Well, the cover's nice. But underneath the cover, it's held together with Gorilla Tape, and it goes all the way back. There's no foam, there's no cloth, there's nothing on this seat for about that far and about this far up, which is really sad. So you can kind of see how far I can stick my finger in there. We have a replacement for that. And finally, we're going to be replacing the struts that hold the hatch up, because I was lucky enough to find a brand new pair at the junkyard. Man, my voice is just getting ready to give out. But that's okay, we're going to keep trying. So there's the new light that I found, very nice. The new hatch struts, very, very new. They are very shiny and work perfect. And there is the replacement mirror, which is not all wobbly or cracked. And there is the seat, which I don't know if you can tell, but the foam is all still there on every corner. And it's in just really nice condition. I mean, really nice. So let's go start by putting this corner lens in. So there's the nice new one installed versus the old cloudy one that you can't really see through. It even came with a new bulb, so yay, that's going to look much, much better. This one has the tab broken off on top, so thankfully this one had the tab still functioning. You can see the screw is supposed to go right there. We're not going to focus on the mirror just yet because that's the hardest thing to do. You have to actually take off the inner door panel to replace the mirror. Why? I have no idea. You'd think they would have just made it easier, but that's fine. The next thing we're going to focus on are those hatch struts, and then probably come over to the driver's seat. So let's go focus on these struts. Real strange setup on these struts. They are connected to these little brackets, and there's two 10mm bolts on the bottom, and there are two 10mm bolts on the top. Very strange setup. You can tell these are probably from the junkyard too, but I didn't do these, the previous owner did. They lasted a good long time, but now that I've found these new ones, it's time to swap them out. If there's one thing you can do to make this job just a little bit easier, put a pair of vice grips on the other strut when you're taking this one off. Otherwise, you will get bonked in the head. I've already had this happen before, and I'm not doing it again. So, thank God for vice grips. Working on the other side now, you can see I haven't bolted the top up yet, and we do have the vice grip on this side holding it up. Although, to be fair, this probably would have held it up on its own, because it's pretty strong. Here's the old shitty ones. I can't tell what brand these are. They do have a bunch of Japanese writing on it, so I'm going to assume these are the originals. But I'll verify that later. As you can see, overspray from when the van was painted, and they're just completely blown anyway, so we know those are bad. I'll check those in the city waste basket, and we can get to installing the new driver's seat. That took care of those ancient hatch struts. Now we can move on to the driver's seat, and yeah, you could see why I'm replacing it. It's basically not even a driver's seat anymore. It's like a mixture of garbage and tape. In fact, I had to put right here some kind of little foam, like pool noodle basically, to keep my ass from sliding off the seat. Well, I'm kind of like Hank Hill. I don't really have an ass, but if I did, it would slide right the fuck off this seat. You have no idea how much foam is missing. Look at that. That's terrible. So I'm going to get to removing this seat now. Shaggy and Scooby, you go with Velma to the spooky bottom basement of the house where a monster is sure to rapify one of you, and me and Daphne will go to a spare bedroom, and well, you know how the story goes. So we got to get this driver's seat out. The driver's seat on a Previa is only held in with two 14mm bolts, one there and one there. There are no front bolts. It's like a clip, like a little armature that comes down and locks into place. It's one of the reasons that these cars are considered somewhat dangerous, because in the event of an accident, these seats have a habit of snapping completely off and ejecting you either into the roof or into the steering column. And the steering columns have a habit of coming out of the actual dashboard and going up and spearing the driver in the face. If you want to see a clip of that, I'll show you it right now. So yeah, you can see that that's a little bit dangerous, so just be mindful when you drive these that you don't want to cause an accident, and you definitely want to avoid them if at all possible, so be a defensive driver. But anywho, let's get this seat out. So with the driver's seat out, you can see how to access the motor underneath the driver's seat. You push this little tang back and it releases the hooks and it flops 90 degrees backwards. Then you open this up, undo the lock, and you can see the motor, which is burning hot right now. But yeah, it's pretty easy. So all I gotta do is go get that new seat from right there, which you can see has a slightly different thread pattern, but that doesn't matter because I'm gonna put the seat covers on it and we can throw it back in. Well, there is the new seat installed. It has a couple little small stains here and there. I would clean it, but to be honest, I'm just gonna throw the seat cover back on. It's much better than this one, which, I mean, just look at it. This was horrible. It's even starting to come apart on this side too. See? So I'm just glad I got rid of this one. I'll go throw it in the local dumpster and be very happy with my new seat. I even like the fabric on it. The armrests almost match. And they feel nice, and this one locks in place unlike my other one, so I think I'm happy. Now I've got the top of the door panel off. You can see the door panel over here is quite a tricky little bastard to get off. You have to take one screw there, and then there's a bunch of clips that you don't want to break around the edges, and they have these weird door lock actuator rods that are actually attached to the door handle. Very strange setup. Usually it's attached to the door and not the handle, but you know how Toyota did it in the 90s. And the next thing we got to do is go underneath this little sheath here, because behind this is the actual wiring for the door mirror. The mirror itself only takes 2 screws to come off, and it's quite easy, but the wiring is a pain in the ass to get both out and in. So give me a couple of seconds here. I need both hands. What you doing, little bit? Hey, guy. Anyway, so I've uncovered the little piece here. You just have to sort of stick a tiny little screwdriver here and unclip it. And then once you do that, these two halves will separate. But of course, they're not going to do it on camera, because why would they? That's the little screwdriver I used somewhere down there. So now I can go on the outside and unclip the mirror and pull it through, hopefully. So for those of you wondering, this is literally all that holds the door mirror on. 2 Phillips head screws, and they're underneath this little stupid plastic cover. Just got to pop this off in one piece, hopefully, and get to the 2 screws. I always use a big, fat Phillips head for this, because you'll strip the screws if you're not careful. Well, that's it for the van, and it's probably going to be it for this episode as well. You can see I have about 223,000 miles on it right now. I bought it with about 192, so I think I've put about 30,000 miles on it in the 3 years that I've owned it. Not that many miles. But it starts right up every single time, doesn't really have any problems. The only light that it has is my seatbelt, because my seatbelt is not on, and hopefully the new seatbelt thing works. So let's see, ready? Perfect. So no lights on whatsoever. I did end up figuring out what was going on with the radio there. For some reason, the fuse that was actually in the inside of the stereo had blown. Very common on these stupid stereos. I've had like 3 or 4 of these, and they've done it repeatedly. So that's going to be it for this video. Hopefully there's going to be more videos coming soon. The car market is kind of in another world right now. And what I mean by that is that even a 1999 Mazda 626 with a blown engine is going for $1,200. Yeah, no joke. So pickings are slim right now. Pickings are definitely slim. But I'll try to see if I can get you guys some more videos soon. I should have an Acura coming, and maybe a Honda Civic that's been in a slight accident, so we can fix that up. But anyway, thank you guys for watching, and as always, I appreciate it. So I will catch you in the next one. Bye.